Hello, my YouTube family. If your goal is to build muscle and showcase your toned body, and you are not seeing any visible results or you are not progressing, then in this video, I'm going to teach you a step-by-step process on how to apply progressive overload as simply as possible. My name is Ella and I am a certified fitness coach. I have been training and lifting heavy weights over the past 8 years, and I have been able to transform my entire physique from just constantly chasing skinny all the time. I literally wanted to have the thigh gap to now being able to have a decent amount of muscle, and that is through applying progressive overload. So let's jump straight into it. What is progressive overload? Basically means to do more over time, whether that is to increase the weight, increase the reps, but essentially we want to be doing more over time. If you are doing the same thing with the same weights, with the same, just the exact same approach every single time you go and do your workout session, then you're not going to make much progress. So it is important that you are applying progressive overload, whether that is increasing the weight or doing more over time, but I will get into on other ways on how you could progressively overload. First, it's important to really understand the why. You've clicked onto this video because you want to know what progressive overload is, or your goal is to build muscle and showcase a toned physique or have a toned physique. Firstly, I need to let you know that a toned physique, you don't just get a toned physique. You need to build muscle to achieve a toned physique, because we all have muscles, and when we drop body fat, your body reveals those muscles pop out a little bit more, and that gives you that toned look. You simply can't just get a toned look without doing any form of resistance training. So you must do some form of resistance training in order to build muscle, to showcase that toned physique, and that is through proper nutrition to reveal those muscles underneath the layer of body fat. I could talk all day about that, but that's just something for you to keep in mind. So the first thing is, what is your goal? Your goal is to build muscle and to showcase that physique. Then we need to be applying progressive overload. And it's important to really know the why, being intentional with your why. You are going to the gym, and I really want to say that every single time that you go to the gym, you have the goal in your mind is to build muscle. So when you remind yourself constantly, of course we all know that the goal is, what we're looking to achieve is to build muscle. I want you to, even though we know that that's the goal we're working towards, but still constantly remind yourself, because when you constantly remind yourself that your goal is to build muscle, then you are going to do everything that you can to get to that goal, and that is through progressive overload. And I just want you to train your mind that you need to apply progressive overload. All right, the goal is to build muscle. The rep ranges when it comes to building muscle is anywhere between 8 reps to 12 reps. So if you have a training program and the exercises are anywhere between 8 to 12 reps, that is the rep ranges that is optimal for muscle growth. If you are working towards strength goal, then your rep ranges would be anywhere between 3 to 5, or even 5 to 8 is sort of the strength, or working towards powerlifting, for example. But for this video, I'm specifically talking about building muscle. And it's okay to work on strength and hypertrophy both at the same time, because when you build strength, you need bigger muscles to get strong, or you need bigger muscles to get strong. I said that. You need to be strong to have big muscles. So they do are hand in hand, just something to keep in mind. So now we've got the goal is to build muscle, and how do we build muscle? We need to be applying progressive overload. We can't be doing the same thing every single time, because when you're doing the same thing every single time, then you're not challenging the muscles that is going to promote muscle growth. So we need to be applying progressive overload. Before we jump into the step-by-step in progressive overload, I need to let you all know that your form is the most important and crucial thing when it comes to training. It should be your priority. You cannot apply progressive overload if your form is not, if you're not confident with your form, if your form is sloppy or you have poor form, then you don't apply progressive overload. You only apply progressive overload only if you nail strict form with the exercises that you are doing. So this leads me to the first point. We're looking at this whiteboard here is, how do you start when it comes to training in the gym and you want to build muscle? First, you want to start with amazing form. Whatever you can start off with. Let's just say, for example, in this video, the example that I will always refer back to is doing a squat. And let's just make it simple, a goblet squat. Start with what you can with amazing form first. Then, yes, the same thing, you should never prioritize progressive overload over form. Always keep that as your priority. And I want to encourage you that when you're doing the exercises, in your mind, you want to be thinking that every single rep that you do in a squat or whatever exercise that you're doing is the exact same. And one tip for you is to visualize the form. There's so much power in mental visualization of the form. So let's just say, for example, you're doing a squat. Think before you perform the rep. I encourage you to think of that. Think of yourself performing the rep and then perform it, because whatever you think, it will translate to the movement pattern. And although it might not feel, if it's your first time squatting or you're not quite confident yet, but the only way to get confident, as we all know, is to be consistent. There's no secret in anyone getting better than anyone else. There's nothing, there's no, this person's being able to do it better. No. It's just being consistent and it's just showing up. There's no secret to it. It's just consistency, showing up. The more you show up, you get more opportunities to practice. With time and practice over and over and over again and making those improvements, you are only going to get better. So make sure that you visualize the form in your mind, and the more you do it, you're going to get more confident. Okay, so remember, form is always your priority. If you are not able to increase the weights, so ideally when it comes to building muscle, we want to be increasing the weights. We want to be lifting heavier to put more demand on your muscles. For example, in a squat, we want to put more load so that it challenges those muscles. It stimulates it for muscle growth. And this, in another video, I'll talk about why nutrition is also important to build the muscle that gets teared during your training session. If you are not able to increase the form, because it will compromise, because if you do an exercise with sloppy form, you are not going to progress. And sometimes you could get injuries and it's not fun to be injured. So please make sure your form is there. If you're not able to increase the weight, there are so many ways in which you could work towards progressive overload. And I'll give an example later. You could do more. As mentioned, progressive overload is not just increasing the weight, it's doing more. Can you add in an extra 2 reps on top of the 6 reps that you are doing? Are you able to have more control coming down? Let's just say, for example, you're going down in a squat, you're going down in a 3, 2, 1. And last week you were going down 1, 2. So you're able to have more time with your glutes and quads, your legs under tension in that squat. So that is progressive overload. You have more control. Let's just say the first week you were able just to, the second week when you do a squat, you're able to reach more depth. That is progressive overload, because more depth means more range of motion. And when you're putting your let's just say squat again, when you go down in that depth, you're putting your glutes in its most optimal position for growth. So getting more depth is a form of progressive overload. And again, improving on your form and technique is another form of progressive overload. And just feeling more confident in your lifts, that is also progress. At the end of the day, we want to make improvements every single session. whether that is feeling a little bit more confident or just working towards that 1%. So just remember, never prioritize your form, never prioritize anything else, but your form is always the first priority. And then there are other ways, which I've mentioned, on how to apply progressive overload. And the next point that I wanted to get to here is progressive overload is never linear. Keep that in mind. What I mean is that every single session you go to, it doesn't mean that you are always going to be increasing the weight. You're going to be improving every single session. Like ultimately, yes, in an ideal world, we want to be making those 1% improvements in not just progressive overload, in life, but you aren't, and I'm saying this because I've worked with many clients where, you know, I drill in them that yes, form is important, but to work on 1% improvements each session. And they feel a little bit disheartened if they're not able to increase the weight the next session. Or if, let's just say, they were able to get to a 60 kilos for this week, and then the next week they weren't able to match the 60 kilos. They weren't able to match that session. In actual fact, they lower the weight and they then don't perform as well as they had. And that is okay, because life happens. These things happen. Lifestyle factors do come into play, and it's not, and I encourage you to not be disheartened, because at the end of the day, we are zooming out in the bigger picture. It is normal to, you know, regress a little bit, but as long as you are showing up, that's a win. Look at the wins that you're doing. You're still showing up. You're still showing, you're still putting in the reps. You're still getting practice of your form and technique. You're getting the practice of being intentional with your training session. It's not just about increasing the weight all the time. And lifestyle factors, which I'm going to share as well, they do play a role in not being able to progress every single session. Perhaps you're more stressed. Perhaps you haven't had enough sleep. You have your period. So as women, when we have our menstrual cycle, that can have an effect on how we train. If generally speaking, when you do have around your period or just before your menstrual cycle, it is normal to feel a little bit more fatigued because of our premenstrual cycle symptoms. It's so normal. So just understand that it's not every single session that you are going to make improvements. As long as you are showing up and you're putting in the practice of consistency, that's a win. But maybe next week you could come back and make those improvements, or maybe the following week. It's so okay. All right. I did also put down genetics as well. Yes, genetics do play a role when it comes to how fast or the rate of how someone would put on muscle. And this is an important point for me to share this with you, is that you should never, please never compare your progress to anyone else's. Everyone is on their unique path, on their unique journey. I'm on my unique journey, and you should only compare your progress to yourself. What can you do to improve for the next time? As mentioned, everyone's journeys is different. So please don't compare. Genetics do play a role, but if you put your energy to comparing yourself to other people, you could put that energy into your own progress and make that 1% improvements for yourself. Because like I mentioned, we all energetic. And another thing that I really wanted to share is, people can look at me and be like, wow, you know, you've got all this muscle, you've got this. You and I are the exact same. The only difference between you and me is that I have been doing this for much longer. That meant that I have more time, more practice in the reps that I'm doing. And you are at such a great point in this day and age right now, where there's so much information out there that you could just get started now. And I encourage you to just keep showing up, because you've got so much time ahead of you. That is your advantage, that you have so much time and you can put this into practice. Because when you look back in next 3 months, the next 6 months, the next 12 months, you're going to be so proud of the effort and the consistency that you put into your progress. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. So don't compare my chapter 30 to your chapter 5, to their chapter 10, to their chapter 12. We're all on our unique journey. Just remember that. All right, so the next, I'll pop on this side. I'm going to give you some examples of progressive overload. But first, before I give you an example, when it comes to optimally achieving your building muscle, when it comes to optimally achieving muscle growth, we need to have a strategy. And I've shared this in previous videos where if you're just chopping and changing programs and exercises, you're not going to make much progress. So it's important to, one, follow a training program, a training plan. If you want, if you want some assistance, I do offer coaching, but you don't have to. You could get coaching, or you could buy a training program from your favorite fitness influencer. But just know that it's important to follow a training program. A training program typically is about 4 to 6 weeks. And in that training program, for the sake of this, I'm going to give you an example of a 4-week training program. And anything that to optimally get to muscle building, we need a strategy. Just like anything in life, if you have a strategy on a plan, you're going to get there much better, because you're going to stick to that strategy. We all know any kind of strategy is better than no strategy at all. So how the strategy on progressive overload in a training block is, on the first week of the new training block, you want to start conservative. We want to give 100% effort. We want to put in the effort. We want to show up consistently, but intensity. First week, we want to start conservative with a 60 to 70% of intensity. Like, let's just say it's like a 70% of like intensity. I don't know how to explain that. And then the second week, we are at the 70 to 80 intensity. And then the third week is at 80 to 90. And then the fourth week, which is the last week of that training block, then we want to sort of put more intensity into it. As you could see, as the week goes by, you're increasing the intensity each time. This strategy gives you more room to improve. And even in the first week, it's not about going all out. Although you can go all out in your first session, in your first week of your training, but that gives you less room to improve. And other ways you could improve is to work on your form and technique. You could work on more depth. So this is such a good opportunity on the first, second week, is to ease into it, that you could work on other areas rather than increasing the weight. So this is just something for you to keep in mind when you start a new training program. This is progressive overload. We're starting conservative, but at the same time, there's other areas where you could work on improving on your form, improving on your depth, getting the movement pattern, connecting your mind to your muscle, and all that cool stuff. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. If it's a 6-week program, then obviously you could do week 1, week 2, start conservative, week 3, week 4, 70, 80, week 5, week 6, 90 to 100. Just example. That is the training block. Let's specifically talk about a exercise. In this example, I have given a squat. Okay, let's look at what progressive overload looks like in a 4-week training block. Obviously, with a training program, you will be doing the same exercises every single week, because we want to make those improvements on those exercises, whether that is increasing, and ultimately it is about increasing the weight or getting better and more confident in the exercise. Week 1 for squat. Let's just say you started off at 60 kilos for 6 reps and you were able to do that. And then the second week, you can stick to the same weight at 60, but you're able to put 2 more reps in. So you're doing 8 reps instead of 6 in the first week. That is progressive overload. It's doing more because you got 2 extra reps. And even though week 1 and week 2, let's just say you had the same weights and the same reps, and you feel that it feels more fluid, or you're able to reach more depth in a squat, that is still progressive overload. It doesn't mean week 1 and week 2 that you need to be increasing the reps or you need to be increasing the weight. As mentioned, and I'll always say this, always prioritize your form. There's always, even for me at this point, I'm always trying to refine my technique, my movement pattern, because I don't want any injuries. The more you train, it's more, and you don't focus on your form, or you don't keep that on top of your mind, injuries can happen, and it is not a fun place to be in. And I could tell you, even the slightest niggle in my knee or the slightest niggle in my back, it is not fun at all, the slightest. So it is so important to always prioritize your form. And you could make an exercise more challenging by increasing the tension, or adding a pause, or going a lot slower, or putting more reps in. So that's just another way to progressive overload. And then week 3, then you could increase the weight to when you're doing squat. When it comes to squat, it's small increments. So you could do 62.5 kilos for 6 reps. And then the following week, it's exact same weight, but you're doing 8 reps. This is just an example, okay? I ideally would like people to increase the reps. If they could, then that's great. And ultimately, yes, increase the weights over time. So that's an example. One common question that I get asked all the time is, how do I decide to choose the weight? Like, what is heavy, what is light? And my answer to that is that, first, everyone's, like, my light could be very different from what you define as light. My heavy could be very different from what you define as heavy. How I would go about this is, you want to pick a weight that is challenging enough to engage the working muscles. If you're choosing a light weight and you're just whipping it through air and you're not feeling your muscles engage, then you need to go heavier. But if you go heavy and you're just feeling like you're moving a heavy weight through space, then drop down the weight. You could tell this if you aren't able to reach a full range of motion, then drop down the weight. If you're not able to get that depth in a lunge, or you're not able to get that depth in a Romanian deadlift, then drop down the weight and focus on tension and tempo. Okay, so this is just a quick, hopefully informative on how to apply progressive overload to your training session. And a couple of things that I really want to remind you, that everyone's journey is different. Everyone's body is different. Okay, so I just want you to know that you are on your journey and that you are on your own unique chapter. So focus on getting strong for yourself, focus on building the muscles for yourself, focus on that 1% improvement. It doesn't need to be about building muscle, like ultimately that is the goal. But I encourage you to come into your workout session and asking yourself, being intentional. This is why you're going to the gym and you're already in your mind, you're saying to yourself, my goal is to build muscle. How can I improve? How can I work towards 1% better? Is that improving on my form? Is that improving on my depth? Is that improving on being more fluid in my movement patterns? Is that just having more confidence in the lifts? So always ask yourself these questions when you're at the gym. It makes a huge difference. So please compare yourself and become your best version of yourself and seek those improvements for you. And second of all, I just want to say that the most important thing you and I are the exact same people. It's just practice. It's just consistency. There's no secret to getting the best results, or it's just consistency with time, with practice over and over again, and just celebrating those small wins, those small 1%. I hope that this has been helpful. Let me know in the comments below if you have any other questions and what you would like to see me go more into depth for the next video. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you so much, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe if you want to see more educational videos on the whiteboard like this. If you enjoyed it, let me know as well. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Bye.